Thanks for joining us today for the first ever Federal Social Media Week. I'm Gabrielle Perrette, Senior Media Advisor to the U.S. General Services Administration, and I'm lead for SocialGov, the federal government's social media community of practice. Today we are joined by the USAGov outreach team for the first session of this week. When is the best time to tweet? A quick reminder that this session is being recorded. I'm sure it'll be a couple of weeks. The Digitalgov team will get the recordings all sent out to everyone so you can send along to your colleagues who weren't able to make it today. Captioning is available via a link sent into the chat box. Be on the lookout for that. If you have any technical issues during this session, you can send a direct chat to the Digitalgov team who can help you. And we will be taking questions at the end. We have 15 minutes to take questions at the end with the USAGov team. As the official website of the US government, USAGov on Espanol develops content and outreach strategies to reach the Hispanic population in the United States and supports other federal agencies by amplifying key information about government services and products. The program has been engaging with the public in their native language for over 15 years. Joining us today, Andreas Ortiz and Carolina Landsberger. Andreas is a bilingual data analyst with many years of experience in optimization strategy, search, and data analysis and data storytelling. One of his key tasks on the team is to analyze all of the data being collected from across their different channels, including survey comments, and make recommendations to other teams in the organization. Carolina is an experienced Spanish language writer and a communications and outreach strategist. As the Spanish outreach and digital marketing lead for USAGov on Espanol, her main goal is to help the Hispanic community in the United States understand how government programs and services work. Carolina is passionate about ensuring the Spanish language public has easy access to official and trustworthy information. Previously, Carolina worked as a Spanish language writer and editor for the Inter-American Developmental Bank and as a reporter for the Washington Hispanic. Joining us at the end is also Claire Loxham of the USAGov outreach team. She'll be making some closing remarks and taking your questions at the end. So welcome everyone. We had a couple fun polls launch when you all signed in. We'll go ahead and close the poll now. We had 92 votes come in. First question, do you know what time of day is best for your agency to tweet? 46% of respondents said morning. 37% said afternoon, 16% said evening, and we had one lone vote for middle of the night. Second poll question, what day of the week do your tweets perform the best? 18% Monday, 33% by far the highest, Tuesday. 28% said Wednesday, 7% Thursday, 8% Friday, and 7% said on the weekends. So that's really interesting with that information. Best day of the week for the folks responding, Tuesday, best time in the morning. So USAGov, what do you think? How did you all determine when was the best time to tweet?
Hi, can you move to the slide 2, please, Andres? Thank you. For those of you who don't know our program, USAGov is the official guide of government information both in English and Spanish. Our goal is to provide all of the resources and information about government programs, services, and benefits in one place to make it easier for our audience to find and understand the information they are looking for. USAGov's mission is to make it easier for everyone to find the information they need anytime, anywhere, any way they want. We strongly believe that the public's experience with government should be easy, trusted, and reliable. Next. As a part of the program, 17 years ago was born the Spanish portal, launched under the name of SocialGov and becoming the official Spanish language web portal of the US government. In 2007, paralleling the USAGov name change, the Spanish portal officially became Gobierno USAGov. Since then, the topics have been selected and the content has been written, especially for the needs of Spanish speakers, particularly those new to the US. In 2008, Gobierno USA joined social media. Today, we have a Facebook account, a Twitter account, an email marketing program, and we are experimenting with bilingual posting in the English Instagram account. 2 years ago, the program was rebranded as USAGov in Espanol. As a program, we are part of the Public Experience Portfolio. Hosted at GSA, the portfolio is divided into 3 branches. The Content and Outreach branch, which is my team, is responsible for content on sites, social media, email marketing, campaigns, and promotions. The Customer Experience branch is responsible for analytics and user experience. And the Delivery and Channel Operations branch, responsible for infrastructure, development, accessibility, the contact center, and contracting. We mutually benefit from the other team's expertise and work together in several projects, as the Twitter experiment that we are presenting today, which was done in collaboration with the analytics team. Next. As I previously mentioned, we currently have 2 social media accounts, Facebook and Twitter, an email marketing program, and we are experimenting with bilingual posts on the English Instagram account. We have hundreds of thousands of subscribers across our Spanish channels, and we are constantly looking for better ways to interact with our audience. Next. Out of these accounts, Twitter is one of the most important, not only because our large following of 184,000 people, but because this fast-paced channel is one with more activity during crucial times like emergencies. Next slide, please. That is why we decided to experiment a little and teamed up with the analytics team to try a pilot that consisted of tweeting at different times, selecting the times based on data provided by the analytic teams, and trying to find the most efficient alternative for our audience. Here are some of the specific tactics we used to reach our audience during this experiment. We posted at least 4 tweets a day to cover all time zones. We posted these messages regularly and consistently to improve visibility. We use relevant images. We partner with other agencies to create networks. We amplified their messages and they also amplified ours. We review surveys, chats, and calls from USAGov in Espanol on a regular basis to understand how people come to other USAGov channels. And we also try to generate messages that are timely in the current environment. And here is Andres to go over the data and analytics.
So the strategies were that Carolina mentioned were based on the essential metrics in the social network. As you can see here in this chart, the numbers fluctuated here in a particular range. And the measure seemed stable for a long time, but we wanted to start the metrics growing. Impression and engagement suffered a significant decline here due to a government shutdown in early 2019. And this is why we refer our metrics to 2018 with, let me see here, average impressions of 121,000 in average per month, 186 likes per month, and 126 likes, retweets per month. But the main rule was knowing your audience. We have several questions when we start the project, how we do it, how could we know our followers like, how could we increase and generate more visualization. And we learn from the 2 metrics that if we wanted to more people to see a tweet organically, our account will have to post more when people were connected. So to get more impressions, we need to generate to play with time. Um, in the same way, we ask ourselves the question for engagement: how can we improve the engagement? We conclude that the only way that we can achieve it was through the content. So talking about time, we decided to tweet at different hours during the day to know the best time to tweet. We took our first sample by tweeting at 8, 7, 8, and 10 in the morning. Then we proceed to do the same, but between 11, 12, and 2 p.m. Then we measure the impressions at 3 p.m., 4 p.m., and 5 in the afternoon. And finally, we schedule tweets at 8, 9, and 10 at night. So United States, is a country with different time zones. So knowing the time our audience accesses the social network was essential to increase the account's visibility. So each tweet that Carolina posts was classified by topic. So we could know which topic attracted more interaction from people. So the numbers that you see here indicate the average interaction which each topic obtained. In the end, the outline gave us several surprises. For example, our readers were more interested in institutional messages from USAGov. For example, enter here to find out more information about the U.S. government. And also, well, besides COVID, we didn't expect COVID were a topic at the beginning of this project. Military was the most accepted topic with message like how to enlist in the armed forces. And another interesting point was that immigration was not a high scoring topic, neither student loans or taxes. So at USA.gov, we could not limit the type of messages that we can post, but we could analyze our readers' preference. So this information, if you want to do the same in your agency, you can compare different platforms. For example, what topic rank higher in Twitter and can compare with Facebook or even with your web traffic to see what is the channel more effective to share one kind of message. I'm not saying that that topics with the lowest score were not interesting for our readers in Spanish, but so immigration, taxes, or even social security have many subtopics that could be analyzed more in detail to see the difference between them. Also, a part of the goal of making government information more accessible at any time, at any place. During this project, we help to amplify the message from other agencies. And this slide only shows you the number of retweets that we share from other agencies. Now, I want to present here the results for this project. As you can see in this chart, the average impressions grew by 53%, and we can observe here an upward trend. This measure was at the middle of the month, so you can see here peak, the end. Also regarding engagement, we can see here this chart, the likes that grew 49% from 180 4 on average to 270 seats. And finally, we also measure the times that our users share the information we post. We saw that they increased also in 39% compared with 2018. In this chart, I just wanted to highlight the upward trend that account showed during the time of the study. We wanted to highlight some crucial tweets that stood out with interactions peaks during the outline. We performed this analysis for 6 months, week by week. Carolina and I, the outreach and the analytics team met to plan this project in detail. And Claire can show the conclusions in the next slide. Claire?
Awesome, thank you. So as both Carolina and Andreas explained, this test was just a really great opportunity to learn more about our overall Twitter audience and really get more of that granular information from this experiment over the course of 6 months. So it was a great chance to set some goals, like both Andreas and Carolina mentioned. We were really seeing that decrease in following. There's a decrease in engagement, especially after the government shutdown in early 2019. So it was a really good opportunity to learn more as we went. This was also a really great opportunity to not only validate some of the things that we knew or thought we knew about our audience, but also challenge some of those along the way. So one of the biggest conclusions that's highlighted at the top here is just our followers are really interested in the broad scope of our content. So the amount that we posted and when really helped add to increases like Andreas showed in impressions, in retweets, in overall reach. But really there was also a big craving and interaction from our audience, which I'll get to in a second. We also found specifically that as much as there are really great times, I know a lot of people highlighted Tuesday mornings as really popular times to reach out to your audience. We found that by hitting across different time zones, we really maximized our reach for our particular audience. So the best times specifically were early in the morning, Eastern, this is all in Eastern Standard Time, early in the morning, middle of the morning, closer to lunchtime, later in the evening, and then even later at night. This has really opened up the possibilities. We were really thinking more in the 7 a.m., 11:03, kind of during business hours. But really, we know that people now interact and crave that information at different times too. And then finally, we really honed in on some of those popular topics. So in that 6-month span, we found that education, military, and health were really popular topics for USAGov and Espanol. But as Andreas said, some topics that normally perform really well, like immigration, like scams, and consumer education, those topics didn't perform as well during that time, this time. And also emergency messaging was really something that was popular during this experiment as well. As Andreas also said, COVID-19 was not anticipated for all of us. So being timely and sharing that information urgently as we needed, whether it's a global pandemic, whether it's hurricane season, which just wrapped up, there was definitely a craving for that information. And head on to the next slide. So this was a very specific test case that we were able to do in a moment of time that Carolina and Andreas really put a lot of time and effort into. But the question really is, where can we go from here? So thinking about opportunities moving forward, one of the big things we want to hone in on, especially now that we've gotten more through 2020, we're almost at the very end, just hang in there for a couple more weeks. We really want to focus in 2021 about other specific elements, not only of our Spanish channels, but our English channels as well.
So this specifically was focused on the best times to post on Twitter in Spanish, but there are really opportunities to learn more about other kind of tactics that we can test. So tagging versus not tagging influencers and other partners, focusing in on a specific campaign on one topic, using hashtags versus not, how different tactics compare in English versus in Spanish. So there's really a lot to learn there. And by fixating on a specific variable or on a specific tactic, we can really learn how that compares to the average messaging that we do on a regular basis. Another big piece that's really great that I know I'd mention later, here's later, we want to find other ways to really directly interact with our followers. So really there seems to be an opportunity and a want to share directly and interact directly with USAGov. So there are other ways that we could really test that, maybe by being more direct and really seeing how our audience reacts to that. So whether that's posting in the middle of the night, whether that's posting direct polls and asking questions of our audience and saying, hey, here we are, DM us, ask us a question, anything like that could really help us let people know that, hey, we heard you, we listened to you, and we want to interact with you, and we have this capability to help try to lead you to clear information and services from the federal government. And then the biggest opportunity I see moving forward, just again, going into 2021, strategizing, it's just really reaffirming the goal of our channel to everybody. So the goal of USAGov en Español on Twitter is to connect people to reliable government information in Spanish. So we are in the top 3 of the most followed government accounts in Spanish. And I think we have a really great opportunity to kind of capitalize on that and use our channel to let people know what we're really all about. So one of our goals is really in that branding space in 2021. So talking more about who we are and what we do and what people can really expect from following our channel. One way that we can really do that is by partnering with other powerful government agencies. So I know Andreas called out a couple of the top tweets a few slides ago, and one of them was related to a Twitter chat that we hosted for National Consumer Prevention Week. And this is where we aggregated information from across other channels. We participated with other government accounts, and really we can tout USAGov and tout our mission that much more with the power of the subject matter experts at other agencies. So that's the end of our presentation. Andreas, you could shift over to the last slide. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for listening in. I think if you have any questions after this presentation, Andreas is our analytics expert, Carolina is our Spanish outreach lead, or if you want to reach out to our entire USAGov outreach team, we're at usamarketing@gsa.gov. And as always, the plug, if any of this piqued your interest, if you're familiar with USAGov, or you even just want to learn more, continue the conversation, feel free to head to usa.gov/partnerships. And this has a lot of information about what a partnership with us entails, what to expect, and how you can reach out to us.
Thanks, Claire, and kudos to the USAGov en Español team for ranking number 3 in government Spanish language on Twitter. That's awesome. That's a great win for you guys. I think we have a few really great questions coming through on the chat box. First off, what platform are you guys using to track your analytics?
We use Twitter, the Twitter tool to analyze the metrics.
And how are you tracking topics like that? Did you comb through that content like manually, or are you using some other system to track by topic like that?
We classify the tweet by a topic, and then at the end of the week, we got the number and then put it into a Tableau file to see the trend.
Okay. So you're pulling all of your metrics just from Twitter analytics then?
And one other thing I wanted to mention, I think with that, we currently use our marketing automation tool, which is HubSpot, and use it to organize our tweets and categorize in terms of campaign tags in those topic areas to really keep ourselves in line on the editorial calendar kind of side of things.
And that's how you guys tracked it, by like education, military, immigration, how you track those type of, you do that in HubSpot. I suppose if your agency doesn't have budget or they can't get any of these third party platforms approved, alternately, I mean, if you don't have too many tweets, you can always download from Twitter Analytics into a spreadsheet and just mark them if you wanted to do a one-off quick look at like a month, or a week.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of information on Twitter has gotten a lot more robust recently too. And I know a lot of their like native scheduling tools and things like that have gotten a lot better too. So there is a lot of opportunity by just manually exporting. And if you know what metrics are important for you, like I know Andreas called out retweeting, impressions, likes as really big metrics for Twitter. Once you hone in on those for your agency and some of those goals, that makes it that much easier.
I have a question for the USAGov editorial team. Do you all, when you have a tweet, if it's a tweet on education, do you run that tweet, that same tweet multiple times at different time zones?
Yes, we did. Like we tried all of the topics at different times, thinking on how they would perform in different time zones.
Okay, so it's the same tweet, different time zones.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that. Some of the tweets we repeated twice a day, like early in the morning, thinking East Coast time, and like later thinking on Pacific time. Okay.
And do you have, go ahead,
I just wanted to call out, this is something that obviously we learned from this pilot. And I know Carolina still does this to this day. I was actually looking at some tweets this morning. And I think, especially in this time where people are seeking out information, as it has been impacted by COVID, we find that repeating information in the morning, in the evening, multiple times a week to make sure that people are seeing a deadline or something that's urgent, that tactic has really increased that reach too. People know that information's coming, and we've actually tested that out on the English side as well. So we've learned a bit and are still trying along the way.
That's great. I'll ask you a question. I get sometimes at GSA, because we have the same tactic. We'll run a tweet in the morning, and then we'll also run the same tweet again in the evening, particularly if it's like news. We'll run that a few times over the week. Does your audience ever get annoyed if they see the same tweet twice?
No. we never gotten a complaint about it. No.
I'll second that. That was my same response too. I've never had a complaint about it. We've never had a comment ever about seeing something multiple times.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think that highlights a lot of differences between the different platforms that we promote through. So I think that because once you have a tweet out on Twitter, it's kind of in the abyss. You may not see it anymore after a certain amount of time. It's not, we find people come to their feeds for information. So if they follow us, they see that kind of feed of information among the other channels that they follow versus coming to our specific profile to look at that repeat a few times throughout the week. I think people on Facebook comment a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I also would say that the Spanish audience is much nicer than our English audience. So we get more of that constructive feedback on the English side than we do the Spanish side.
Interesting. Yeah, I've read that. I think I'm kind of like, maybe I'm fuzzy on the numbers here, but it's like 90% of the content, 90% of comments, are only made by 10% of the users on Twitter. And I've heard that tweets have, a life of about 2 hours. So I think that would make sense why people don't complain. I've already seen this content. I think that's interesting. I feel that question a lot when we talk about tweeting on something multiple times. I have a great question here from Sophie Dean. How many topics do you tweet about in a day? For example, for the times you indicated, are you sharing the same tweet at each time or varying the topic?
We try to diversify the topics as much as we can, especially because we partner a lot with other agencies. So we try to amplify all of the different agencies' messages, and of course that varies on topics. So if we are talking like health and repeating a health topic twice one day, we try not to post a health topic the following day, and that like.
We also have that unique scope, I think, compared to a lot of other government programs. We really hit the broad reach of federal information. So we have the flexibility that if we have a health post 1 hour, 2 hours later, it's benefits, 2 hours later, it's passport renewal, 2 hours later, it's scam prevention. So we really have that flexibility, and clearly the audience responds to it.
I think you might have touched on this earlier in your presentation, but when you guys have identified something that's a pretty hot topic for your audience, like I think COVID-19 was hot topic, the broad USAGov channel type topics are pretty hot. Now, does that mean that you take that information and post more about COVID, or is that just, how do you use that to improve the performance of your account?
Yeah, well, during emergency times, like whether it's COVID or a hurricane or anything like that, we do post like mostly about that topic in particular. But as Claire said, we have the benefit of doing it from different angles. So we do post like on COVID that whole day, but we post like on the health angle, on the security angle, on the like, you know, the law angle of it. So the same is with like hurricanes, for instance. We work a lot when a hurricane is about to happening and after it happens. And we partner with different agencies on that. So we work with like, and we post topics related to housing and health and emergency itself. And so, yeah, same topic from different angles, basically.
Great. I got a question here from the chat box. Do you find that testing, did you find that your testing on best time to post was different than the recommended times given when scheduling posts? This user said, Sprout Social, but since you guys use HubSpot, we'll do the question for that. Does HubSpot recommend a great time to tweet? And do you guys know better than HubSpot?
So one thing I'll say is that we've used HubSpot now for about 4 years. So the tool itself has gotten pretty smart in suggesting times to post and what works well. So we definitely planned around that with the cluster of 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. But I think the real point of this, and of course, Andreas can speak more to this, but those clusters of time were really to make sure that we're hitting those different times a day and learning around that span of time. So as much as it's based around what was already working in some regards to our audience, it did challenge some of those and get later into the day. And like I said, more of the like mid-morning, mid-afternoon was the default for a long time. And now we've stretched even early in the morning, 5 to 7 a.m. And even as late as 11 o'clock midnight on a couple of our channels.
I remember when last year GSA celebrated its 70th anniversary, and I was running, we had like an unbelievable amount of content that we ran recognizing our 70-year history. And I was chatting with Claire at that time, and she was talking about experimenting, tweeting at different times of day. And I have to say, it had never really occurred to me, like, well, we can schedule posts. Who's looking at our post in the middle of the night? And so we had this unique opportunity. We had all these 70th videos. And so the last weekend of the campaign, I ran our videos like around the clock. So it was really interesting. I can't say that we had like a big bump at like 1 a.m. or something like that, but I thought it was fascinating to see, wow, people are viewing our content. You know, maybe that speaks to our audience. Maybe that's bots. You know, there could be a lot of different things, you know, who's looking at a GSA tweet at 2 in the morning. But it's definitely, that's interesting. And it did, for me, it did prompt me to play around with different times more than just the 8 to 5, and then make sure we're tweeting on weekends. We capture an audience later for West Coast folks who, you know, might be 9 o'clock here, but it's still 6 o'clock for West Coast. So yeah, remembering broad spectrum of time zones and, you know, where your audience is. We have a great question here from Haley Carducci in the chat box. During the time of the testing, did you have any sponsored content going, or was this 100% organic?
It was 100% organic.
Oh, great. That's great, interesting.
Gabriel, I also want to complement the previous answer that there is a few research about how to tweet and when to tweet in English
Yeah.
in the US, but it's not any research about to tweet or post for a Spanish audience in the US. It's hard to find. This is why we're starting to do the project.
Oh, wow, interesting. So did you guys, with your research here for the Spanish audience, have you outreach to the other Twitter accounts? I know you had your list where you ranked top 3, you know. I hope they're sitting in on the call. If anybody's there, chat us.
With the Twitter accounts of the other agencies?
Yeah, they may be interested too with the Spanish language research.
Oh yeah, we have like a very good relationship with most of them.
Oh, great, great.
Yeah.
Let's see, let me look through the chat box for some more. We have a question here from Emilio Garcia Miguel. How do you deal with questions? Do you point users to direct message or do you respond with links? How do you respond to interactions and comment?
We respond the questions where we get them. If I get a question on a DM, I respond the question by DM. If I get it by comment, I respond it in the comment. And of course, there are certain questions that are off limits and we just cannot respond, like, especially during the elections. We had a lot of political questions / comments that we couldn't engage with, but any question we can answer, we do where we get it, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's been interesting to see up until recently, I'd say the majority of questions for the Spanish channels came through Facebook. And recently it's increased on Twitter. So I think that also validates some of those direct interaction assumptions that we learned from this pilot. And like Carolina said, we really try to answer questions as best we can. We do answer them directly ourselves. So our outreach team, which is a mighty team of 3 people, responds to those comments throughout the week. And if there's a particular question that we can't answer, we do navigate that over to the agency experts. Like we said, we can't exist without the subject matter expertise from other agencies. So there are cases where, hey, this is way too specific, or hey, this is way too nuanced and we don't quite know how to address it. So that's where those partnerships that Carolina mentioned come in handy, so we can pass it off to other agencies. But a lot of the times it's navigating to a resource, it's trying to get a little more information about a program or a service, and that's the bread and butter of why USAGov exists. So we aid with that navigation, and a lot of the time it's connecting with other agencies or connecting with agency websites.
That's great. Thanks, Claire. We got a question here from the Florida Sheriff's Office. They noted their Hispanic demographic is small in their county, but it's growing. And so they're looking to do some outreach. Any tips on how to outreach to Spanish audience?
That's a very broad question. Well, we have a brainstorming meeting once a week with the whole outreach team. And we review week by week what are the topics people is looking for on our website, what is people asking and calling about to our contact center, and we gather all the data we have, and according to the interest of the audience in that particular week, we set like a content calendar and we post about it. And we also retweet a lot of the other agency information too. So that we do.
One thing I would also highlight, so as we've all said, USAGov is comprised of a lot of channels in English and in Spanish. And to Carolina's point, we do a bit of planning. Our brainstorming sessions that we do with our outreach team and content contributors every week allows us to plan for a certain extent, but also being timely, ready for those retweets, ready for those other shares, ready for major breaking news that also happens. But the big thing I wanted to emphasize, I guess, for any platform that's looking to be bilingual or looking to stand up Spanish accounts, it is not a one-to-one relationship between your English channels and your Spanish channels. I think one thing that we've learned and really benefited from is the concept of transcreating rather than translating. So thinking about something that might be helpful for your English audience may be confusing to the Spanish audience. I know there's a couple more, we actually post a little bit more on the Spanish Twitter than the English Twitter to give ourselves more space to also add more context, repeat messages to really build up that education, because the reason people are coming to the Spanish Twitter may not be the same as the English. So I think just keeping that in mind as you're growing that strategy, there are definitely tactics that work across the board, like including tips directly in messages, making sure to link up important information where you can, but sometimes that copy is different, or sometimes it takes even just, I guess, language to language. It takes more words in Spanish to explain something than you might directly in English. So that takes up character count. So you have to be strategic on a platform that's limited like Twitter. So there's a lot of things to think about when you initially start, but just knowing those differences and trying to learn more about that audience as you communicate or as you grow that, I think is half the battle.
That's great, thanks. And I like this tip of looking to see where people are interacting with your website content and then having that integrate into your social strategy. I think that's a great idea. We have a great question here from Trina Knight. How far do you plan in advance to organize your topics? Do you work off a set content marketing strategy, or is it less structured?
That is also very different in English than Spanish. Like in Spanish, we plan less far in advance than in English. I'd say the most I have planned in advance in Spanish is 4 days, probably, because the interest of people changes faster for some reason. Probably because the Hispanic audience does not have the background they need to look for certain information, government information. Sometimes they want to look for something and they even don't know what they should be looking for exactly. So yeah, we are trying to understand what they need and trying to meet their needs, like weekly basis. And like as Claire says, that changes very fast if like there's like an emergency or breaking news or like anything.
Thanks, Carolina. I have a question here from Esther at GSA. Is posting the same content across platforms such as Twitter and LinkedIn considered good practice? What do you guys think about this? And how do you do your content strategy? If you have a topic on Twitter, does that push through to your Instagram and your LinkedIn as well?
Okay, so specifically in Spanish, sometimes we do post the same content, but it's the same content, but it's not the same post. We write it very differently for Facebook than Twitter, because our audience on Facebook, we have found, is older. It tends to be less educated. So we have to work be very wary of the plain language and try to be very like direct and simple. And people tend to comment more on Facebook too. So we engage in conversations. As on Twitter, our audience is younger and well educated. So we just like, sometimes we just like a sentence, it's enough for them to have the information they need. Also, there's way less people clicking on links on Twitter than Facebook. So we have to be also like conscious about it. There's a lot of different things to think about. And on our bilingual posts we are doing on Instagram, we try to meet like midway between like English and Spanish audience to do like an actual bilingual post. And it's been very successful overall.
Yeah, and I think as you come up with a strategy along the way, there may be certain like allotments, like for example, for USAGov, we post 4 or 5, like 3 or 4 tweets a day typically, and like outside of some of the emergency commentary I know that Carolina mentioned. If you have an allotted amount of time, or an allotted amount of posts, it does not need to be a one-to-one exact from Twitter to Facebook to Instagram to LinkedIn. I think this goes back to learning more about your audience. The more you post, the more you'll know how people engage with certain topics. For example, I know we've done less Medicare, less Social Security, some of the things that skew a bit older on Instagram, because those are less visual, the audience is much younger, the demand is much different, and we've seen low engagement on those kind of posts. Mm-hmm. Some that we've tested have done really well and surprised us. So for example, IRS information, I think because tax information tends to be heavier, more serious, it can definitely include more information that you need to go to a link. That's something that we didn't include a lot in Instagram at first, but when we presented a couple more messages, learned there is actually a pretty strong audience for that. That's a really good educational opportunity, and we adjusted our strategy from there. So point being, it doesn't need to take up a slot necessarily, it doesn't need to be a one-to-one relationship across your channels, but you learn as you go and adjust as you go.
That's great. Thanks, Claire. I have one last question to close us out. I think this is a really interesting one for the USAGov team, since you have a Spanish and an English channel on Twitter. Diego says in the chat box, do you recommend having separate channels for English and Spanish? He notes he is also from a sheriff's office. And Sarah from the Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs at Department of State chimed in and said, separate channels mean more work. Their channels always post from the same account, both in English and Spanish. Your thoughts, since you guys have an English and a Spanish accounts for USAGov, what are the advantages in having 2 accounts?
So it depends on the channel, first of all. Like Twitter and Facebook both do great with separate accounts because the audience are very different. Spanish from English audience are very, very different. But Instagram, we have learned that does very well with bilingual posts, probably because people is much, much younger than on the other channels. So most of the Hispanic population, I assume they also know English, or at least they have the background of American people. So that makes it easier for them to understand. Another thing that some agencies should take into account is that, for instance, I'd say probably 30 to 40% of the audience we have on Facebook is from overseas. So it's people that doesn't speak English at all. They don't have any background on US government information at all, or like, so we have to take that into account, and that makes that channel very, very different to the other ones.
And I guess one comment that I would have about having a separate channel for English and for Spanish, wherever it is in outreach, I think if you have an established English account or English language account, this is where testing comes into play. Like, create specific parameters for you to test on certain days. You have like 2 Language Tuesday, something like that, to promote bilingual posts, to see if the engagement changes in any way. See if you have any sort of feedback loop in your existing channels, and see if you get questions in Spanish versus English. So I think just doing an analysis of that audience and testing out things, you may find out that, yeah, it's not worth creating another account or managing another specific account, especially if you don't have like the marketing automation tool or some sort of management tool to help keep that in line. I think there's no point in creating extra work if you don't have to, especially I think to Carolina's example and Carolina's point, our Instagram, we don't have a lot of bandwidth, I'd say, to create a separate Spanish Instagram may not be the best bang for our buck in terms of ROI, but it is a great place that it's an easy lift when we have the content already ready. Carolina transcreates it, we structure it in a specific way, include bilingual hashtags, and send it out, and it's not a lot of effort for a pretty good amount of engagement, and to learn more about that audience. So incrementally learn that as you go and create a business case, and I think you learn it's worthwhile or not.
Thanks, Claire. And I think a big takeaway is from this whole presentation is, always to be sure that you are reading your metrics and making data-driven decisions. That adds to the conversation. I think sometimes in social media too, we just feel like we know something's doing great, or we feel, I don't know if you've ever had a campaign you've put together with some really awesome visual content and some great copy, and you're like, this is going to do great. Then you look at the numbers and it's like, well, that didn't do what you thought it was, or vice versa. So I think it's important when making any, decisions about your content strategy, or if you want to branch into two accounts, a Spanish account and an English account, making some tests and looking what the data supports when making those types of decisions. So I want to thank our presenters, Andres, Claire, and Carolina today for coming to talk to us. If we didn't get to your question in the chat box, their email addresses are up here on the screen along with the USAGov. If your agency wants to partner with USAGov, please reach out to them, and they would be really excited to talk to you about that. I encourage you, I chatted out the link. If you guys haven't already signed up for the rest of the sessions, we have 6 other awesome sessions going on this week. Tomorrow, we'll be having an afternoon session as well. So, and then please remember to give us some feedback on the session today so we can continue to make these greater than ever. So thank you everyone again. Take care and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.